Hola, me llamo Sarah, and I chose option 2 for the Spanish 102 examination. This is my outline that I will be using for the video. So for the beginning of the course, we started off with review, specifically review vocabulary words, and I'm just going to mention some of the words that we learned, or the words that we reviewed. So it started off bienvenida or bienvenido, which means welcome. Buen viaje means have a good trip. Feliz cumpleaños means happy birthday. De nada is you're welcome. Yo soy is I am. So, for example, if I wanted to say that I am Sarah in Spanish, I would say yo soy Sarah. A very common phrase, question is ¿Cómo estás? That means how are you? These are just some review words that we learned. There are many more, but this is just one of the ones that I just picked up on. And then we also learned about cardinal and ordinal numbers. So these numbers are actually different, and the differences lie that show that cardinal numbers they denote quantity, while ordinal numbers these are numbers that express position in a series. So to focus on cardinal numbers first, I'm going to reference some of these numbers, such as 14, which is 14, cinco, 5, uno, 1, dos, 2, tres, 3, 50 is 50, 40 is 40, 19 is 19, 18 is 18. So these numbers signify quantity, therefore they're cardinal numbers. And to move on to ordinal numbers, these are words such as first, second, third. And so first, in this instance, is primero, and then second is segundo. Also words like middle and half. In Espanol, that's medio. Other ordinal numbers are cuarto or cuarta, which is fourth, or decimo or decima, which is 10th. So as you can tell, these words show the position in a set of numbers, and they're very common if you're in, for example, in a line for the bus stop. You can signify where each person is standing using ordinal numbers. So now I'm going to be discussing ser, estar, and I. So ser and estar are defined as to be in English, but they are slightly different in the way that they are used in sentences. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the conjugations that these verbs face in different tenses. So for ser in regular form, the yo form would be soy, and then the tu form would be eres, and then the ella, usted form would be es, and then nosotros would be somos, vosotros would be sois, and then the ellos, ellas, ustedes form would be son. And now for estar, the conjugations for the yo form would be estoy, the tu form would be estás, the el, ella, usted form would be está, the nosotros form would be estamos, vosotros form would be estáis, and the ellos, ellas, ustedes form would be están. And for these conjugations, all of the a's are accented, besides nosotros form. And so now I'm going to be talking about when to use ser and when to use estar, because you do have to use them in different scenarios. So first, the difference of what something is and how something is. So for ser, you use conjugations and just generally ser when you're talking about what something is. And on the contrast, for how something is, you would use estar. So for example, if I wanted to say that Janet is a student, I would use ser and say Janet es una estudiante. So that means that she is a student, so that's what she is. So that's why I would use ser. But if I want to say that Janet is sad, I would use estar because that's how she feels. So in the sentence I would use would be Janet está triste, meaning that she is sad. And then another difference that these words are used are where and the location. So for ser, you use it when you want to talk about where something or someone is from. But for estar, it's different because you use estar when you're talking about a specific location or where someone is physically. And so, for example, if I want to say that my sister is from Korea because she was born there, for example, I would say mi hermana es de Corea, which means I use the conjugation of ser because that's where she's from. But if I want to say that my sister is in the school, she is present physically in the school, then I would use estar because that's a location. So then the sentence would go, mi hermana está en la escuela. And now to talk about I. So I, Hay, that means there are or there is in English. So I can be followed or can be the beginning of a sentence, but is followed by singular or plural nouns, and its form does not change whatsoever. So I will always stay the same form. And so if I want to say that there are a lot of people in the museum, then when there are would be I. And so if I were to translate that into Espanol, I would say hay mucha gente en el museo. So once again, I did not change because it stays the same form. And that's part of the rule. So now I want to get into the stem changes, and I have some handy cards with me to help me explain them. So for stem changing verbs with E, they change to IE. And so I chose the verb querer, and so the E changes to IE. And this is the yo form, so it would be quiero. And of course, the conjugation, the stem change, it is followed throughout all tenses besides nosotros, which is important to remember because in any case, nosotros does not follow the stem change. So if I were to go on with the tú form, it would be quieres, and then the él, ella, usted form would be quiere, and then the nosotros form would be queremos and would not have the I in there. And then vosotros would be quieres, and then the el, ello, ella, ellos, ellas, ustedes form would be quieren. And also, forgot to include that vosotros form does not change with the stem change does not occur to the vosotros form either. And then I'd like to move on to O and UE. So a stem changing verb changes the O to the UE. And so, for example, if I have the verb soñar, the O would change to UE. And then the next one I can pick up is eat, who, I. So, for example, if I chose the verb repetir, the E would change to I. And these are all in the yo form just to stay consistent. But of course, the stem change would apply to all the tenses besides nosotros and vosotros. And then next up is verbs with I changing to IE. And so once again, the I in quieren would change to IE in quiero. and that's yo form. And then a verb with u, stem changes to ue. So the verb jugar, which means to play, the u would change to ue and spell it juego in the yo form. So that sums up the stem changing verbs. But now let's talk about present indicative verbs. So I will be discussing AR, ER, IR verbs in the present indicative. So to start off, we can discuss about AR verbs. So for AR in this conjugation, the yo form would be O, the to is us, ello, ella, usted form would be a, nosotros would be amos, and then the vosotros would be ais, and then the ellas, ellos, ustedes form would be an. And so if we draw upon the verb hablar, which is to speak, it'd be, the conjugation would follow as yo form, it'd be hablo, to form would be hablas, the ella, usted form would be habla, nosotros would be hablamos, and vosotros would be habláis, and then the ellos, ellas, ustedes form would be hablan. And then moving on to ER verbs, the yo form would have the change to O, the to would be S, and then the el, ella, usted would be E, and then the nosotros would be hemos, and then the vosotros would be es, and then the ustedes, ellos, ellas form would be en. So if we use the verb comer, which means to eat, the yo form would be como, the to form would be comes, the el, ella, usted form would be come, and then the nosotros form would be comemos, and then the vosotros form would be coméis. The ustedes, ellos, ellas form would be comen. And then lastly, the IR verb, which before I start is very similar to the ER conjugations, except that the nosotros form and the vosotros form is different from ER. So for the yo form, for the rest it's applies the same as ER. But if I were to use, for example, vivir, which is to live, and conjugate that in the present indicative, the yo form would be vivo, the to form would be vives, the el, ella, usted form would be vive, and then the nosotros form would be vivimos, and then the vosotros forms would be vivís, and then the ustedes, ellos, ellas form would be viven. So that sums up present indicative verbs. And now moving on to irregular verbs in the yo form. So these are verbs that have a different change conjugation only in the yo form. So I have, there are 4 of these, and I have them right here. So first one is hacer, which in the yo form has the irregular change to hago. Next up is poner, has the irregular yo form of pongo. And then saber has the irregular yo form of sé. Kind of, you can't really see that. There you go. And then salir has the irregular yo form of salgo. So those are the irregular yo form verbs. Now talking about present progressive verbs. So these verbs, conjugations are used when you want to talk about what you're doing currently or what is happening right now. So like in English, it'd be the verbs with the INGs, for example. And so I have some guides that will help. So for AR verbs, the endings would go to ando. And then for ER and IR verbs, the endings would go to iendo, so they share the same ending. So if I were to use the AR verb hablando and create the sentence that I'm talking with Francesca. If I were to translate that into Espanol, I would say estoy hablando con Francesca. So the reason why hablar sounds like hablando is because it's an AR verb, first of all, so that's why it has the ando ending. Now, if I wanted to translate the family is eating at the cafe or in the cafe, I would translate that into Espanol as la familia está comiendo en el café or la café. And so the reason why is because it'd be la café, actually, I believe. So the reason why it's yendo is because it's an ER verb. So that's why it sounds comiendo, because it's the present progressive would take up this ending, not the ando, because it's not an AR verb. So that sums up my explanation of what we learned in Spanish 102 the first semester. Thanks for listening. Gracias.